Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your sun in Pisces and Aquarius rising. Now the interesting thing about the sun in Pisces, and if we were talking about the sun in Aquarius, we would say the same thing, is that these two signs are adjacent to one another. So it is very possible that both of these signs, people who are born with the sun in either one of those signs would have inner planets of the opposite sign. So in this case, it's not that unusual for somebody who has a sun in Pisces to maybe have Mercury in Aquarius, Venus, or Mars in Aquarius. Now the moon could also be in Aquarius, but it's really so changeable that it's not really, that tied to a specific date. But definitely those other inner planets. And the reason that and the same thing would apply to if you had your sun in Aquarius, about Pisces. And the thing that I find very interesting about that is that I draw a link between Aquarius and Pisces. I think both of these signs are pretty spaced out. And what I mean by that is that Aquarius is a sign that is ahead of its time. It's brilliant, but it's like the eccentric professor who's always thinking of these like really far out ideas. And it's the sign of the inventor. And it's very intuitive. And we know that Pisces is very psychic in and of itself. And because Pisces is ruled by Neptune, it too is not of this world, So if you combine these two placements, you can get somebody who really is in another dimension, even though they're walking around in this one. So anyway, what you have here is somebody whose sun is in Pisces, and that's the Pisces traits are what they wish to embody, and the goals that we would associate with Pisces are what they wish to accomplish. The rising sign is the cusp of your first house. So that means for this combination that you are ruled by Uranus, also called Uranus or Uranus, and Saturn, believe it or not, because that is also, that was the traditional ruler of Aquarius. So those two planets are your rulers. Well, you could say the sun is your ruler too. In other words, Neptune. And I think that a lot of people would not really attach Saturn to the typical Aquarian, persona, because Saturn rules Capricorn, and it really is much more in alignment with what Capricorn represents. So I'm going to leave off the Saturn part and just talk about Neptune and Uranus, and those are two far out types of planets to have as the rulers of your sun and your rising sign. So when you have Aquarius rising, I think of Janis Joplin because she was a sun in Capricorn with Aquarius rising, but her sun was really very close to Aquarius as well. It was January 19th. And she was one of those people who really did not fit into the environment. She grew up in Texas, and especially in those days, it was a lot more, it was very conservative, and she was always different. Even if you take away any of the things she wore, and you can see pictures, I've seen a picture of her where she was very straight-laced, and all of that. But she had a very, she kind of had that tomboyish type of, look to her. And she wasn't classically pretty, but I found her very to be very pretty in her own way. So an Aquarius rising sign person does not want to fit into a mold. So in terms of one's looks. So when you combine that with the Pisces sun sign, I think that there might be more than normal amounts of hippie types of dress because of Aquarius rising in and of itself, but also because Pisces, that spiritual thing, I don't have that. But for instance, today I'm wearing those elephant pants that are from Thailand. And, you wear a shirt and it's like you look like a hippie no matter what age you are, or the deadhead types of clothing. And because the sun is in Pisces, there's a very artistic or whimsical type of personality, fantasy laden. So the person isn't necessarily invested in fitting into the mainstream by any stretch of the imagination. I can't say that this is going to be true 100% of the time. I'm sure I'm just bracing myself for the person who says that they dress very preppy, if you know what that means. Like in Clueless, what Alicia Silverstone wore. Actually, when I was in high school in the early 80s, the preppy look, was kind of like certain things that were, it looked very conservative, traditional. You know what I mean? So those kinds of fashions, there might be a few who do that. Now, that's a good point to make, because if you grow up in a very hippie environment, like, I can't say, like maybe in Berkeley, California or something, maybe that's how you stand out from the crowd, by dressing very conservatively. So that brings up a good point, is that it's not always about, to be an Aquarius rising isn't always to be this kind of 60s, holdout or something like that. It's really about being different and not fitting that mold. And I know I'm talking a lot about things that might be considered superficial, like how you dress, but that's what the rising sign is. It's not your true self. But what I'm trying to say here is that I do feel that given the sun sign, even though they are adjacent signs, and adjacent signs can be very, very different from one another, I do feel there is a common thread between Aquarius and Pisces. Pisces isn't trying to rebel to piss anybody off. Pisces is trying to live life in a transcendent kind of way. And also maybe sometimes to be quite to create their own reality, if you will. And it can be that fantasy reality. Yeah, it just reminded me, oh no, talking about these other things, of people who, and this is typically the younger generation these days, who decide, I don't know if it's deciding to identify as like somebody from a movie or what have you, but I think that there is a lot more acceptance for people to decide to embody, maybe some kind of a character that they like from a movie. And I can see somebody who's a Pisces sun sign who wants to do that. If they want to be like a certain character, then they may dress the part, and that would be their quirk, because Aquarius rising can be very quirky. Now, in terms of how this plays out on a daily basis, it depends, because we have to look at different placements to really get a good feel for that. It's not going to necessarily mean that the person is just completely unable to function or anything like that. One of the saving graces of Aquarius rising is that it's a fixed sign. So the person may maintain a certain amount of routine in their life. And that you could look at especially when the person is younger, before the age of 30, they may have this kind of like a backbone. I want to say another word that means kind of like that outline of their life that is pretty consistent. And because Pisces is, first of all, Pisces is a water sign. So it's not, it's very prone to being influenced by what is around it. And it's also a mutable sign, so that increases the ability to be influenced, because the mutable signs are very changeable. I mean, flexible, which is changeable. But then on top of that, you have this situation where the ruler of Pisces is Neptune, and Neptune is not about boundaries, it's about dissolving, it's about the exact opposite. So when somebody has the sun in Pisces, the sun can be our egoic self in a good way, how we forge an identity for ourselves based on our talents and interests, let's say it like that. But with Pisces, it can be very diffused, it can be very indistinct. The person who has the sun in Pisces may not give off a solid self. And because of that, there can be this, depending on other factors, the person may be like throwing things against a wall, trying to make them stick. And especially, I think, when they're younger, because when we're younger, we don't really understand ourselves in the world very much. So it's more, I think it's more commonplace to try to try to create an image or fit into one. And so the Pisces person may find themselves trying to do that, but they're always met with the fact that they are different. They may be different for other reasons. They may have kind of unusual mannerisms that make them, stand out from others in a way that is not necessarily welcoming sometimes. There may be like times when this individual feels like they are on the outside looking in. And one thing about Aquarius is that it's kind of like this contrarian sign and energy influence, because on the one hand, it rules the 11th house, which is the house of friendships, group association. So there's that social, it's context or connection. It's the collective. That's what the 11th house represents. And yet Aquarius doesn't want to be one of the crowd, doesn't want to fit into that group. So that's really bizarre, because, you would think that Aquarius would just love the idea, because Aquarius does love the idea of being, on an equal footing with other people, not above and not below. That's the democratic way of thinking. It has nothing to do with political affiliation, just about this idea of everybody should be treated equally and on equal footing. And so you will find that people who have the sun in Aquarius tend to do this, where even if they are a boss or something like that, they may treat their employees like they are one of them and not, I am this higher level. But I said may because trust me, it doesn't work out that way 100% of the time. But anyway, so this combination, the person may, on the one hand, want to belong to something larger than themselves, some kind of group, their soul tribe or whatever you want to say it, but they may find it hard to find that at least initially, because of, that's just par for the course. Sometimes it can take us quite a while to find our soul tribe. I have, in the 11th house, I have Chiron and Saturn. I know that. I still haven't found mine. I think I have online, but not in real life necessarily. So this can be kind of that yearning to find, to be part of something bigger than yourself. But it might be in the meantime that you feel that you stand out. And because your sun is in Pisces, that might be painful because, Pisces wants to be, I do feel that Pisces wants to be accepted. And being a water sign, there is that love of humanity and people. And when you find yourself shunned or isolated, it can be very painful if you really want that. Not everybody wants that. So if they're shunned, they're like, okay, good, it solved my problems. But it all depends on the individual. But anyway, definitely I feel like this combination in terms of careers is going to more than likely choose a type of career that has an altruistic vibe to it. The service to self model of careers based on, oh, I can make all this money, I'm going to have this job title, and I can just lord it over everybody. That I don't think is very appealing to this combination, because the Aquarian part of it wants to be seen as one of the gang, one of the equals, and so it doesn't really crave leadership and fancy titles. And then the Pisces part wants to heal the world. So there's that humility that is natural in, I think, both of these signs, to be quite honest. I think sometimes the only thing I can say about Aquarius is that sometimes they might have a tendency to be too smug about their intellect, which is very massive, and they might act like a know-it-all. And so they might be a little bit arrogant and not suffer fools gladly, be kind of almost like very, rolling their eyes with the average person and how that person thinks, not just in terms of weighty intellectual topics, but also just the intuitive side of things, not having that kind of perception, we call it extrasensory perception, ESP, but just that being very tuned into things at a deeper level. And certainly Pisces is very psychic. So that can lead to careers in healing arts. Anything from actually being a psychic or a medium to being a Reiki master. You have to look at other factors too, but I would say, in addition to these things, maybe even if you were a teacher, because I think all water signs have very strong memories. So they can, memorize facts and things like that. If it's something along those lines, this might be the professor of world religions, or even if it's just like whatever topic, including history or something, there's going to be that side that is very receptive to new ideas, like Pisces, and maybe even spiritualizing everything that they talk about. But, anything can be, Pisces, I think, might be good at even, who knows, maybe there are some Pisces people who would be great accountants or great investment bankers. You never know. I'm not saying that, oh, wow, it can only be something that is on the spiritual level. But if it is something along those lines, the person is still going to have that humanity to be able to, not maybe fall to temptation and get greedy. about, taking money that they don't need to take, or, being, where it's never enough, that kind of thing. But I would say that that isn't the first type of profession that I think about. Education is different, especially early child education, because it's not really that linear. There's a lot of creativity with young children. But the Aquarius part makes it a little bit tough, because typically when you're ruled by Uranus like this, you don't want to just do anything from a cookie cutter perspective, including what it is that you do itself. And, looking at other factors, there could be other factors that support that the person doesn't even want to work a 9 to 5 type of job, that they want to have something very unstructured, or on their own timetable. So it's difficult to really talk about that at length. If I were to just say, first and foremost, I would say something in the more healing and intuitive arts, first and foremost. So, in terms of love, that can produce a lot of complications, because I see Pisces. When I think of Pisces, I think of that song. Was it Stephen Stills? Love the One You're With. Because I think of Pisces as a sign that is very receptive. And that can mean receptive to love. I'm not just talking about sex and all of that, although Aquarius rising can be a sign that wants freedom at all costs, including freedom from having to conform to relationships. The symbol of the of Pisces are two fish swimming in opposite directions, and so that can be, like I said, symbolic of the indecision of Pisces, and the sun sign position here, where, identity, like, well, do I do this? Do I do that? But even in love, not being sure who is right for you, who you really care about. I could see that with Pisces, and having a rather fickle quality, and with the rising sign being Aquarius, not just wanting to settle down necessarily, loving your freedom. So it's one of those things where maybe if you just meet the right person completely, that will solve that problem for you. But in general, you may just like having occasional dalliances and not really having long-term relationships. That's, pretty broad brush. That's a pretty broad brush statement. And I think that, but a Pisces sun sign may have, I don't know, can you have Venus in Sagittarius? I don't think you can. You can have Mars in Sag, but I don't think you can have Venus. So, but even in Aquarius, if you have Venus in Aquarius, you're really going to want a partner who gives you a long leash. And you're going to want somebody who is, off the beaten path. Again, look to your Venus sign to determine what you're attracted to, and or Mars to what you're attracted to, because it can be, if you have these in Capricorn, then you may tend to be a little bit more conservative in that regard, and what you are interested in, what you're looking for. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.